Oh, my MS diagnosis came about really as a surprise because quite coincidentally, or perhaps not coincidentally, the year in 2008, I started in January with having a heart attack. I went to the ER, I knew something was wrong. I wasn't grab your chest heart attack, but I had this little discomfort from here in my throat. I woke my husband up, who was sleeping in his easy chair, and said, something's going on, give me a couple aspirin and drive me to the heart hospital. He's like, you're kidding. And he woke up fully and said, you're not kidding. I said, no, I wasn't. So through some dumb luck, I had that little instinct, that little voice that said, something isn't right, you better get this checked out. So I actually had a myocardial infarction in the ER at the heart hospital, so after I was there. And the process of being there and being checked out for my heart attack, they say, what's wrong with you? What else is wrong? Is there anything else we should know about? I kept saying, I can't feel my leg, I can't feel my leg. And that had been going on for a while, but I had had previous back problems, so I thought maybe it was just a pinched nerve. So my leg was numb, but I was still walking, I was moving about, powering through. So when I was laying there in the heart hospital and they're hooking me up, is there anything else wrong? Yeah, my leg. By the time I got done with 4 days of testing, and being at the heart hospital, they sent me home with this diagnosis of an unknown origin of my heart attack that sent me looking for answers. But in the meantime, my leg was still numb. So I had this variety of doctors I picked up. I had a cardiologist, my family doctor. I've got this discomfort here, still I've got a GI doctor now. Maybe it's not GI, let's send you to an ENT. And they just kind of passed me from doctor to doctor till finally, I said enough. I wasn't satisfied with the care I was getting from my primary care physician, so I made a switch. And I called and set up an appointment with a new primary care doctor. I was actually, my husband and I had the good fortune to go to Belgium that summer. And I went to Belgium and I didn't realize I was in a full-blown MS relapse. All I know is I was miserable, I was tired. We did a lot of sitting at table cafes and going, oh, I'm fine just to sit here. And a day left on a trip, I looked up and said, I really just would like to go home. And our plane tickets were for the next day, so we couldn't leave early. But we did, when we got back that following week was when I had the appointment with the new doctor, and she listened to me. She actually sat and listened to my story. Spent a lot of time as a new patient, and said, okay, it sounds like you're in good hands with the cardiologist and the gastroenterologist and the ENT, but maybe we should get that leg checked out. And I said, oh, bingo, yeah, let's get my leg checked out. So she sent me for an EMG, electromyogram, where they pins and needles and current, and the results were mixed. So they asked me to go back and have a second one, and the results were still mixed. They weren't quite sure what they were seeing with those nerve conduction studies. She said, well, like a week later then, I was like, let's send you for an MRI just to be sure what's going on. So the MRI was done. They did a full brain and spinal series, and with and without contrast. And I didn't expect anything real. I didn't think anything of it because I'm still functioning. And my husband and I were actually out of town again. We were standing on the shores of Lake Erie. I can tell you exactly the point where I was at and the view that I had. And we're looking at kind of sunsetty time, 7 o'clock in the evening on a Thursday evening, and my cell phone rings. I'm like, well, that's odd. The only person who calls me is standing on the beach right next to me right now. So answered the phone, and it was the doctor's office, but it was the nurse. And fortunately, I have a wonderful primary care physician who empowers her staff to really talk to us as people and not just patients. And when the nurse said, the doctor would like to see you tomorrow, we've got your MRI results back. And I said, well, I can't come in tomorrow because I'm out of town. But how about Monday, and can you tell me what's going on? And she said, yeah. So she read me with the report there, and it showed that there was a suspicion that there was a demyelinating disorder, that they suspected it was multiple sclerosis. And I hung up the phone, looked at my husband, and I said, probably it's MS, so let's go to dinner. Went and had my couple of really strong gin and tonics that night, tossed them back and said, okay, let's get on with it. So, and then that Monday, she stayed after hours at like a 5 o'clock appointment to meet with him and my husband. And officially, with multiple sclerosis, it's a complex disease to diagnose, and you're not going to get that diagnosis from a primary care physician. It's going to have to come from a specialist, and you want it from a specialist because it's a disease that once it's on your record, it changes so many things for you. It's so complex and hard to understand. And when I saw her and she said, okay, here's your options. You have to see a neurologist because I cannot diagnose you officially. But we're sure from your MRI it's MS. I'm like, okay. So made the phone calls. I got hooked up. I went up to Ohio State University in Columbus, about a 60-minute drive for us. When I called to set the appointment, because she knows I'm a kind of a take charge person, she said, well, we'll send the paperwork up, but then you call to do your own scheduling because you know what your calendar looks like. And I went, well, yes, I know my calendar. And I called, and the doctor they referred me to, this was the end of July, the doctor that she referred me to is one that other patients in her practice also see for MS. And I couldn't get in to see that doctor until November. They said, well, will you put me on your waiting list? If you have a cancellation, I can get there sooner. But I'm thinking July, August, September, October, November. I can't wait 4 months to find out answers or to start treatment, and not fully understanding MS. That probably would have been okay to wait, but it wasn't. I said, is there any other option? He said, well, we've got this brand new doctor who just arrived. He's seeing patients next week. He can see you. So I was either his first or his second patient there at Ohio State. And to this day, we joke and we laugh that I was his first, but he was my first because he was my first neurologist. And we went through the testing, a lot of lab work, a lot of blood work, a lot of tests, an MRI, the spinal tap, you name it, and did those tests over a period of like a week and a half. And his office again called me on a Monday and said, Dr. Boster wants to see you. When can you come in? And I said, okay, it's confirmed. That's all the confirmation I needed was if they say, when can you come in? That means that they really feel like there's some serious issues going on. So I went in and first thing he walked in, said, well, I'll be up there Thursday. At that point, I wasn't in a panic about it because I had other tests that he had ordered for me to do a CAT scan because he's very thorough. He said, we'll do a CAT scan to make sure it's not cancer. And whatever you do, when you walk out that door, don't tell anybody that I said you have cancer because I don't think that, but we need to rule it out. So I walk in, we get in there on Thursday, go in, and he walks in the door, sets down my file folder, and immediately looks at me and says, okay, you have MS, let's get that out of the way. So, okay, let's get it out of the way and let's get on with this. So that was my diagnosis story. So even though I probably had it for 20 years, and even though it took from January to July to get in to see somebody who actually would listen to me and my story, the process was really fast after that. And I was diagnosed in about 6 weeks from start to finish from my first test.